We stop?
9:47, and I'll send you a note 5 minutes ahead of time and then 1 minute ahead of time. All
Okay.
right, you'll have the floor. Take it away, Anita. You're live.
Okay.
Live now.
Hello and welcome to this panel discussion only 81 blocks away before the Bitcoin halving. Our topic today is Bitcoin as a money for people across the globe. Our participants are working and living in all parts of the world, so they can bring us first-hand experiences from the ground. I want to introduce to you our panel participants. I start with Carla with a C. Carla Kirk-Cohen is a developer at Lightning Labs, and she is located in South Africa. Hello, Carla.
Hi, everyone.
Then we have Maurice. He's the founder and CEO of Yellow Card, a Nigeria-based Bitcoin exchange. Then we have Dominik Weil. He's the co-founder of BitcoinVN, Bitcoin Vietnam, the first Bitcoin exchange in Vietnam. And last but not least, we have Youssef. Ray is the CEO and co-founder of Paxful, a peer-to-peer marketplace for money transfers that's active worldwide with an emphasis on Africa, India, China, and Russian countries. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Anita.
So our topic is Bitcoin as a money for people across the globe. The special thing about Bitcoin is it's open and permissionless, so everybody can use it. And to me, this is the most interesting part of what Bitcoin can do, to be a tool for monetary freedom and a tool for financial inclusion for billions of people. What would you say are the drivers of Bitcoin adoption in the countries you are most active in? Carla, can you start, please?
Sure. Well, I'd say in South Africa, aside for the speculation case, of course, which doesn't need much explaining, I think that the offer of financial sovereignty, and particularly that of the mobility of Bitcoin, is a motivating factor for people over here. We've had quite a lot of political turbulence since democracy arrived in South Africa in 1994. And people do worry about the future of their money in South Africa because it feels quite uncertain at times. And we do have pretty strong capital controls in place. One thing which I think is a huge factor is our proximity to Zimbabwe and our collective memory of the hyperinflation crisis in 2007. We know a lot more than most what it looks like when a country is completely destroyed by hyperinflation because we watched it happen to our neighbors. At home, we saw unprecedented numbers of refugees fleeing Zimbabwe because their wealth had been completely destroyed by their own government. And it was quite a startling thing to see here. We had people with PhDs begging for money on the streets. We had school teachers working as gardeners. And really watching that happen firsthand shattered the illusion for a lot of South Africans that all you need to do is work hard to secure your financial future. And that really scary knowledge that your money is not at all your own motivates people to hold Bitcoin and hedge against their own government. And I think something that Andreas Antonopoulos says of Bitcoin in Latin America holds very true in South Africa, that you don't really need to tell people why Bitcoin here, you just need to tell them how.
So it's just a need for it. And the fear of being, that money is stolen basically from the government.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That fundamental distrust in your government and their ability to protect your wealth.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what would you say is the driver of Bitcoin adoption in Nigeria?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would agree with Carla, and that's a lot of what we see across Africa as well. So I mean, right now we're in Nigeria, South Africa, and Botswana, and that protection and that security for the future is definitely a big driver for it. And I mean, I think the whole COVID situation has really exaggerated the problem that was already there. And so, I mean, if you look at Nigeria or South Africa, both currencies have devalued about 30% against the dollar in the course of a month and a half with the COVID situation. And so, I mean, that threat and that fear was always there. And, it took a situation like this to just really make it, known to everyone. But I mean, certainly protection against inflation, that hedge against the risk of the local currency is a big part of it. But you know, it's just Bitcoin solves so many problems for people on the ground. And, you know, really, I mean, you can kind of just, you know, pick out of a hat, you know, which problem is it solving for any particular individual, right? Whether it's that protection against inflation, whether it's the need to move money around, whether it's the need to, you know, secure money outside of cash, anything like that. I mean, there's just so many reasons why Bitcoin works for Africa and for other emerging parts of the world. And yeah, I mean, that's any and all of those reasons you'll see people getting into it for.
Mm-hmm. Ray, what's your experience?
Our experience is that there are 7 true use cases for Bitcoin, and we learned everything we know, particularly from the peoples of Western Africa. They made the case very clear to us. So started with gray markets, right? Then went to speculation. That's currently where the vast majority of our volume resides, as Carla said. And then you have the 5 true use cases, which are payments, e-commerce, wealth preservation, remittance, and my favorite, social justice, the magical number 7. So we've talked a lot about the remittance use case. Well, no, not on this panel, I'm sorry. We're talking about wealth preservation, mostly on this panel. So wealth preservation is a use case that's only going to continue to grow as the currency wars ramp up. We don't have to talk about Venezuela, 1,000,000% inflation, Argentina, Turkey, Zimbabwe, Nigeria. I just followed suit in the past 8 weeks, and the currency war is going to continue to flare up all over the world. But there are other use cases. However, wealth preservation is very strong in that it really gets people to type Bitcoin into a search engine for the first time and explore. And why are they doing that? Because they want to protect themselves. No one wants to use their entire life savings in a week. Imagine that. Something your whole family's been saving up for entire lifetimes or several lifetimes, gone in a single week. This is a very real situation for people. But there are other use cases as well. You have to talk to the people. You know, whenever someone gets on Paxful, they might end up talking to me. I do customer support every day. Everything we learn from the streets. But I don't have too much to say about that right now. I'll wait till everyone else speaks, and I'll start giving some more examples of the use cases. I think everyone could really benefit from that.
That's great, thanks. Dominik, how is it in Vietnam?
I think here the value proposition of Bitcoin first and foremost was recognized, I mean, as a tool for speculation. In Vietnam, East Asia, you have generally a lot of people who are quite the gambler types. That's quite different from like Central Europe, Frankfurt, Germany, where I'm coming from, where people are happy to just keep their savings in the bank, even at like negative interest rate, but at least it's safe and predictable that you are losing your money there. In Vietnam, otherwise, that people can use it to transfer money across borders. That's something also basically everybody recognized, just because like every family here more or less has to deal with cross-border transaction, which is also quite different from like Europe, where like the average family probably never really has to send money abroad. Here, the wealthier families, I mean, they move their own money abroad, or they support their kids abroad. Or if you're in a poorer family, you have maybe family members working abroad, sending money back home. So that's a use case which before Bitcoin even was around, people recognized that moving money across borders is useful. And if you can save some money there, that's even more useful. I was just paying today with a traditional transfer because I had no other means to do so, and the vendor didn't accept cryptocurrency. A payment to Russia, which was like, I think, $420, and I ended up paying with the bank 432 euros, which is over 10% in fees. Yeah, and that's definitely much cheaper if you can do these things with Bitcoin. One trend we are seeing so with like the cross-border transactions is that these days stablecoins, and especially Tether, is gaining a lot of traction there. Given that, yeah, the volatility of Bitcoin is still around, and it's easier to facilitate these transfers these days in stablecoins, so that when you do these transfers, you don't suddenly lose 5% or something when there's some market movements. So that's one of the trends which we have been seeing, especially over the last 6 months here. I mean, Tether was already used before a fair bit, but especially over the last 6 months, it has taken over in volume at our OTC desk, which we are also running here. Yeah, the volumes which are more for these transactional purposes.
Okay, thank you. So now you touched a point that's also true for impoverished people, the volatility. So the volatility of Bitcoin is one of the obstacles, because if you're poor, you can't afford to lose the money again very soon. So what do you say, what do you think are the obstacles to Bitcoin usage for impoverished people? Carla.
Well, I think an easy answer here would just to be to blame education or user experience, but I actually think it's a lot more low level than that. For the poorest people out there, it really does seem to be a matter of resource constraints, because when you have a decentralized system like Bitcoin, you are inherently shifting resource consumption away from a central server and onto the end user. So if I look at South Africa, for example, most people live in informal housing. They have unreliable access to electricity. They're reliant on mobile data. And with the cost of mobile data in South Africa, it would cost you almost $1,000 to sync up a full Bitcoin node, let alone run it. And to people in low income groups, that is over 50% of their monthly salary. So it's just completely infeasible to do that in those economic groups. And even though we do have solutions coming out like the Blockstream satellite, the setup cost there is non-trivial. The educational requirement is still significant. So right now, to operate Bitcoin non-custodial in a very low income setting, I think is actually just completely infeasible, unfortunately.
Yeah, I made that experience too. I was in February in Zimbabwe and saw that too, yeah. Chris, what do you think about the obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the main obstacles, especially for lower income individuals, is just simply access, right? Being able to get their hands on it in the first place, being able to make that initial exchange for a lot of people, especially people living in lower income brackets in emerging parts of the world. They're living completely on cash, right? It's a cash-based informal economy. And so they can't, log into a crypto exchange and make a bank transfer and then, figure out how to use an order book and, get that money shifted over to Bitcoin, right? So it's not necessarily, like Carla said, it's not necessarily an education. It's not necessarily, anything like that. It's simply being able to get your money into crypto in the first place. I mean, I think that's why I mean, wallets, even custodial wallets and everything are important for some of these people, because it brings down the cost and it makes it more accessible, at least for them to get started, right, and for them to start on that journey with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Ray, what is your experience? You're muted.
Yes, I was. Chris and Carla brought up a lot of good points. So when you look at a market, let's say Nigeria, for example, when we first went there 4 years ago, the price of Bitcoin was 30%, 20 to 30% over market, right? So we had to, before we wanted to achieve our dream of introducing Bitcoin to Africa, we had to actually bring the Bitcoin to Africa. But there's a problem, is that it's hard to get money out of African countries. Even South Africa has a 6% premium on Bitcoin. So how are we going to solve this problem? How are we going to get all this Bitcoin into Africa and introduce people to the crypto revolution? How are we going to do that? That was very challenging. It was like Chris was saying, it's a matter of base accessibility. People there are living off cash. They don't have bank accounts. Even the ones that do have bank accounts, it's nearly impossible for them to transfer money from a Nigerian bank account out of the country to Europe or in America. There are many examples of this. It's extremely difficult. It's very hard to turn Naira into USD. So we set up and created a trade route, a corridor between China and Nigeria using a digital asset of gift cards. And through that, we created a payment corridor of about $50 million a week, which flooded the country with Bitcoin. Now Bitcoin is at pretty much market rate in Nigeria. It's the biggest economy in Africa. So that was a base foundational problem that had to be solved. Before you can get people started, you need to get them to Bitcoin at a reasonable price. Now we get to a really interesting point in that, here in the West, we always think Western Union, 20% fees, that's crazy. Who's going to pay that? Well, the truth is people in emerging economies are happy to pay 20%. That's actually a bargain for them because the world that they live in, the question is, can I actually do this thing with my money at all? At all? Is there any way it's possible at all? Like in Nigeria, here's some examples. You know, if you have a bank account with money in it, they'll give you a Visa or MasterCard debit card with $100 limit a month online. Imagine all the plastic in your wallet being limited to $100 a month. You can't even buy a PlayStation, right? So what are people to do? And that's where the only thing that can really help there is a people-powered marketplace for money transfers, where any form of money can become any other form of money using Bitcoin as just a clearing layer. And this is the killer app of Bitcoin. This is what the African people taught us over these past 5 years. I will share more examples later.
That's nice that you say the African people taught you, because actually they have a lot of knowledge and they know how it works. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. So Dominik, how is it in Vietnam? What are the obstacles there?
Okay, I mean, if you're talking about like the lower income segments, I mean, like the rice farmers and so on, which you have here on the countryside, I mean, they are not going to speculate on Bitcoin or necessarily put their remaining savings there in Bitcoin. But what's more relevant there, and we also just discussed this, is like the cross-border transactions. So to make it easy and save money when there's money coming from, I don't know, there's maybe some family members working in some factories in South Korea, for example. And the end is that the recipient doesn't necessarily need to know or how to use a wallet or something, but the sender would need to know. And what we have done there is basically built an application which makes it easy to cash out the Bitcoins in VND, Vietnamese dong, the local fiat currency here, so that the poorer people, they just would receive the VND. That's what they know. That's how they can trade then on their local markets in their villages up there. And the person on the other side who is making the money abroad can then send the money home this way. This way, you don't have to educate necessarily the end user, the recipient here, about how to use a Bitcoin wallet and how to cash it out on some exchange or whatever. But they still can benefit basically from the exchange, from the benefits that Bitcoin is bringing along there.
Yeah, thank you, Dominik. I think one way to bring money into these countries would be to let them earn Bitcoin or Lightning in a way. And I also think that Lightning might be crucial for the adoption there because, as you know, it allows for smaller transaction fees and micropayments. Carla, you are working at Lightning Labs, and I guess with Lightning or for Lightning. How far are we from wallets and a Lightning network that can cater the masses?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic about the Lightning space because I spend every day watching it grow amazingly. So I'd say on the wallet side, we're fairly close. We have wallets like Breeze Wallet and Phoenix that have really done incredible jobs at easing user experiences such as onboarding and acquiring liquidity. We also, on the more technical side, have innovations like Neutrino, which actually allow you to run a Bitcoin node on your phone. Like on a smartphone, you can run a Bitcoin and Lightning node and have a wallet that is completely contained on that phone. And that's incredible. But of course, the same resource obstacles that apply to Bitcoin do apply to Lightning even more so, because Lightning does have an always-on requirement. So reaching the poorest of the poor, I don't think it's very feasible right now. But for a more general use case, I think Lightning's certainly getting there. The ability to amortize the cost of many payments over 2 on-chain transactions is really an incredible thing. And when we start to talk about some of these use cases we've been discussing in this panel, I think something really powerful about Lightning is that it really does allow for instant settlement. And that can really help reduce the volatility risk that you have when you are moving Bitcoin across borders, because there is still 30 minutes of confirmation time between countries, and that can be a very significant chunk of time in Bitcoin. So I think that's a fantastic thing that Lightning will enable. And I believe that larger services will start to set up larger Lightning channels as the network matures and act as a settlement layer, as Ray was saying. And then just touching on the earning in Lightning case, I think that's also wonderful as well, because to earn in Bitcoin, you might need to do quite a significant amount of work. But on the Lightning side of life, we've got apps like Stackwork, which allow you to do very small tasks and receive very small amounts of Bitcoin. And it's really a nice experience to go into Stackwork, do something very small, and that Bitcoin just immediately arrives. You don't have to wait. You don't have to understand much. You just get paid out instantly.
Yeah. I showed that to some people in Zimbabwe and they were like, wow, because you also, you don't need an understanding of Bitcoin because you can cash it out over Bitrefill or something instantly. And I guess also over Paxful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lower level of that. You don't have to now wait 30 minutes for your Bitcoin to arrive. Some of those things are addressed much more seamlessly.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what do you think about Lightning adoption and also on your exchange?
Yeah, I mean, Lightning is definitely the future of Bitcoin, right? And being able to hopefully significantly drive down the transaction costs and everything is going to really help propel Bitcoin. What I would say though is I would contend the fact that, or I would contend the notion that the high transaction fees have really prevented adoption, just because people are smart, right? people around the world, especially people that really need this technology, have always found a way to make it work. And so, I know, with Paxful, with, transfers amongst just Paxful wallets, right? That's a big way that people make it work without having to send the money on chain. That's one big thing that people will do in any country is they will, just have the recipient download the same wallet as them, eliminate that cost of moving the money on chain, which again is why I think custodial wallets and everything are important, especially for lower income earners in some of these countries, to enable them to be able to make those transactions on the same wallet, to be able to keep that cost low. Because unfortunately, it can be very expensive to send Bitcoin on chain right now. And so I think things like Lightning will certainly improve that, and they'll make the network a lot faster, a lot safer, a lot better overall in the long run. But I don't think that it's necessarily been a major obstacle to adoption, because people will always find a way around. People are innovative, man. So.
Okay, thank you. Ray, what is Paxful's strategy on Lightning? You're muted again.
The truth is, we really don't have one, Anita. I wish I was qualified technically to talk about Lightning, but I'm not. And sure, Carla could run circles around me up and down there. So I'm keeping my mouth shut on the technical front. The truth is, we're much more concerned at Paxful with why people should come to Bitcoin and that whole process where they do that first search for Bitcoin. What are they looking for? How do we get them to actually use Bitcoin? Like Carla mentioned before, and so did Maurice. Most people come to Bitcoin out of speculation's sake. They see it as a tool of investment, right? That's how it's been pitched to people, especially the peoples of Africa. I'll give you guys a little anecdote. When we did our Paxful campus tour last year, 8 universities in Kenya, and 8 total in Kenya and South Africa. Whenever I spoke to the people there and I asked them how many people here have been ripped off in an MLM mining scam, half the room would raise their hand. How many people here have lost money mining Bitcoin? Half the room, and I got another half of it. And then how many people have lost money day trading? Again, most of the room would raise their hands. So everyone has been or known someone who has been scammed with crypto, because they only see it as a tool of investment, and that's the problem. So we're coming in with this new dialogue. Hey guys, it's not a tool of investment. It's a means of exchange. It's something you can use to literally do anything you want with your money. For us, that is like 99.9% of our attention has to be there, because we have so much work to do to dispel all the negative press and lies that have come from the scammers and the reverse media funded by bankers and all this and all that. And then just the basic use case of using Bitcoin itself. What started this company was this whole back page effect thing. And I remember I was on the phone for 6 months with people, literally for 2 hours at a time, teaching them every step of the way, every click, how to use Bitcoin. You don't really have any vision here unless you've actually been on the phone with a middle-aged person with barely a smartphone, trying to teach them how to copy and paste the Bitcoin address on a browser on a mobile phone. That's where you need to be. When you get there, then you'll understand, yeah, Lightning is awesome. I'm sure it has amazing potential, but our challenges right now are so much more fundamental and foundational. We need to kind of take a step back and bring the emphasis back on product and making seamless interfaces for human beings. Maybe I sound like a broken record about this, but every time someone asks me about some, fancy technical stuff that I'm not qualified to speak about, I like to bring it back here. I hope I don't sound like a politician.
No, it's great. Dominik, what's your what are your thoughts about Lightning, and would BitcoinVN integrate it soon?
There is some proceedings. I'm not sure if we can say soon. I hope that we see actually the first integrations happening in the second half of the year for a part of our services. So what has been happening here is in Saigon, the local Bitcoin community has actually set up their own node and experimenting around a bit with it, so that we don't have just like all these theoretical talks about Lightning. We had like, I think the first talk about Lightning from one of our guest speakers coming in here early 2019. So that was like really quite early when kind of the network was just coming up. We have followed a bit like the developments there over the time. And then like last fall, the community has then set up the first node to get some practical experiences. Have to say at this point in time, you can't really expect like your average user to dabble around necessarily with Lightning. It's still quite technically challenging to set it up. So at the moment, it would be more like service providers or enthusiastic hobby users to set up the nodes and work around with it. So it feels a bit like Bitcoin in its very early days, where I recall the very early interfaces also were not made for your average person. And that's a bit where we stand right now with the Lightning Network. So to set it all up can be a bit painful, but once you get it working and do then a payment, I mean, the payment experience itself is just beautiful. I mean, you send it and boom, it's done. For like 1 Satoshi or whatever, you can send like really these micro payments around. It's confirmed basically instantly. That's definitely beauty. That's an amazing moment when you do your first payment there this way. Just at the moment, it's still technically a bit clunky to get it all set up and running. But yeah, we are looking at it. We hope that also then the second half of the year, our own services will also start offering to a limited degree and then slowly integrate it more and more to all the services which we are offering.
Okay, thanks. Let's talk a little bit about the developments around Bitcoin. So Libra presented its white paper 2.0, and also central bank digital currencies are coming. Do you think that Libra, for instance, will be a game changer, and will it be a competitor to Bitcoin? Carla.
This isn't something I'm particularly well researched on, because it's not something I chose to spend my time on when the paper was originally published. But I don't really see it as something that's comparable to Bitcoin, because it's not sovereign money. It's money controlled by a federation of companies who, if I am correct, have already reneged on their intention to decentralize further. So my belief is that it'll probably be regulated out of existence before it ever launches. And if it does launch, it'll compete more with PayPal than Bitcoin, I think. But it's not something I'm particularly educated about, I must say.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, well, I agree 100%. I think Libra, as it stands right now, is more of a threat to PayPal than anything. But I mean, even if Libra were to launch and were to somehow get past all of the central banks and everything in its originally intended form, it still doesn't, number one, solve the problems that Bitcoin solves, and number two, it still doesn't solve that problem of access in the first place, right? So Facebook will have to do with Libra what everybody else is trying to do with Bitcoin, and get it out to people, right? I mean, Facebook, the entire continent of Africa is not going to change to the dollar because Facebook releases a digital form of it, So it's even Libra in its original form would still have that problem of access, but definitely with how much it has been washed down at this point, I think that it's going to be I think it'll be a great replacement for PayPal.
Yeah, but the on-ramp, I mean, there are 2 billion people using it already, and I think everybody in Zimbabwe is using it in a way. So it would be very easy for them to use it, wouldn't it?
I guess if Facebook wants to take all the money in Zimbabwe, and I mean, the thing is in order to get onto Libra from Zimbabwe, somebody would have to take your Zimbabwean dollars, right? Or your USD in cash in Zimbabwe, or EcoCash, or something there. And I mean, the bottom line is nobody really wants that, right? I mean, Facebook, I guarantee you Facebook's not going to take EcoCash.
And the government of Zimbabwe also doesn't want that, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, the government doesn't even want it. So yeah. it's still that issue of on ramping and off ramping, right? So I agree. Libra would be great if there were some way to shift the entire country of, say, Zimbabwe onto it, right? But there's still that problem of how do you get people onto it in the first place? And so then the question becomes, if Bitcoin and Libra are going to be equally difficult to access, why would you want to use the more centralized, more controlled one, right?
Because people don't care, I guess. Because they are impoverished. They take everything they can use. Yeah, thank you. Ray, what's your opinion on that?
Well, some good points from both sides. I think Bitcoin and Libra can definitely exist in the world. And I will say that if Libra manages to bring on-ramp and off-ramp a lot of people, and then we'll use them. We'll add them as a payment method to Paxful, and we'll make them clearable with Bitcoin, meaning someone could take their Libra balance and turn it into Alipay or PayPal or anything else, right? So I think they'd fit in nicely there. It all depends on how much traction they're going to get, how much onboarding are they going to do, like what off-ramps are they going to have. They're welcome to use some Paxful products that would help them on-ramp and quickly into their system. But at the end of the day, you brought up a good point, and people really don't care. Bitcoin is awesome. It has all these immense advantages that centralized systems like Libra or PayPal do not have. But at the end of the day, people just want to go about their business. They're not going to look at things ideologically or egalitarianly. They don't see it that way. So Bitcoin is the future. Libra, I believe, can also have a future. I'm not too concerned about it right now. As far as Paxful goes, we will integrate it into our ecosystem if it can solve real problems for real people in the real world. I think Bitcoin should be more concerned about Tether right now, but it's not a game of Street Fighter 2 with crypto. We should stop looking at it that way. It's a growing, expansive ecosystem like a mycelium network. We don't have to attack each other. We can work in unison. We can work in harmony. The goal, remember, is to make everyone rich at the end of this, and all we have to do is just let people use their money the way they want to. If Libra can help, let's welcome it to the family.
That sounds great, yeah. Dominik, what are the plans of Libra in Vietnam?
I haven't heard about any specific plans for Vietnam. I mean, Facebook here is still kind of the social network number one in Vietnam. You can't get around it. As a business, you need to be present there. I mean, even a lot of business communications, which like in Germany, for example, would happen on Xing or generally globally on LinkedIn, they just happen on Facebook here. So they have still a pretty strong stand here in the market. But otherwise, I mean, I never was really that much excited about all this Libra hype, because I mean, Libra is not challenging like the value proposition which Bitcoin has. Facebook can't put up a competitor to Bitcoin or something like how it was framed. It's just another kind of e-money. Like you have already all these other wallets out here, be it like WeChat, which is of course in the region quite popular with all the Chinese tourists. Not so much right now, but we have also a couple of like local e-wallets here, and I mean it would fall more or less in the same category.
Dominik?
Yes, can you still hear me? Test.
I think we might have lost Anita. I can hear you, Dominik.
Okay. Yeah. Where did I stand? Something like with Libra. I think I lost track where I was in my talk also. But yeah, it seems with the moderator.
I think Anita might have, her connection might have frozen out. Anita, if you can hear us, if you could pop out and pop right back in, I'll add you back. Anyone else have a comment or a follow-up to Dominik's points there?
All right.
I mean, one thing which I might want to add there is like, I mean, it depends with Libra also, and that's something Ray was also talking about before, integrating with other servers. I mean, it depends how easy it is to do chargebacks. For example, like integrating PayPal is very tricky because PayPal likes to charge the money back. Where with a lot of the local e-wallets here, it's easier because they don't allow that the money gets charged back. And there we would just have to wait and see basically how Facebook is setting up their policies there, if it works to do this as a Bitcoin service provider.
I think Libra will be very interesting. So I mean, I think like Ray said, it's at the end of the day, if it works, it'll just be another way for people to get into Bitcoin. So, and hopefully, ideally, it'll be an easier way for people to get into Bitcoin. So we'll see.
So I'm sorry, I lost connection. I hope I'm back now. Chris, I guess you were the second one. I have lost connection. I guess Ray is the next one to talk.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah, please.
What was the question?
That's a good question because I wasn't here. What can the Bitcoin community do to support these regions of the world?
Okay, that's a great question. Yeah, I think we have to look at models like what the Dash people have done in Venezuela. Very aggressive, cohesive, value-generating campaigns focused on local peoples and local, like very, very local problems, and even setting up specific corridors. This is how we have to approach the game right now. We've done a great job. This amazing human layer on top of the blockchain. I call it a miracle of the Bitcoin community that's developed over the past 11 years. It really is miraculous. And we've done a great job of educating people, evangelizing. But when it comes to on the ground business development that's very focused, very, very few companies are doing that. Like I mentioned the example of Dash, right? That's one example. I'm sure there's a few other examples out there. What Paxful has been doing in Africa, going to universities, building schools, building wells, doing massive grassroots outreach, a peer program. That's another example. I'm not aware of many other examples there. A lot more of that needs to happen. Just to get kind of corny here with you guys for a second, Paxful, we have 3 values, and the first value is that we have to stay connected to the street, meaning we have to actually talk with real people to connect with them and understand how to actually help them. And the second value is we have to build for people, meaning products, right? Not abstract things built for machines or fancy elliptical curves. I keep restating this point over and over again whenever I can, because I'm kind of desperate. I'm making a desperate call. I'm shooting a flare for all the great product people in crypto to come and join me, please. Paxful needs you. I'm sorry I had to do that shameless cry for help there, but we truly do need product people in this space above all that like building things for people. I can't repeat that enough.
So thank you very much, Ray. I think that was a great last statement. Thanks to you all. You brought great insights about Bitcoin usage around the globe. All the best to you and all the best to Bitcoin. Bye.
Bye.
Happy Halving, everyone.
Bye.
Happy Halving.
Lockdown, everyone.
There are many places to buy Bitcoin. They collect your personal information and jeopardize your privacy. KYC is the illicit activity. BISC is open source. It does not collect user data. You keep your private keys, create or take offers to trade peer-to-peer, and keep your Bitcoin private and secure.